but I'll get started today anyway. So my name is Marlou. I am an accredited exercise physiologist and the EP team leader here at Advanced Rehab Centre. And today I will be presenting on getting you fit following a stroke. Okay, so today's topics that I'll be covering today will be what is an exercise physiologist, how can we get you fit, and the benefits beyond just getting you fit, the importance of aerobic exercise and cardiovascular training following a stroke, and also getting you the right dosage and intensity of aerobic exercise and finding ways for you to meet the physical activity guidelines. And then we should have some time for questions at the end, which you can pop in the chat box. Okay, so starting with what is an exercise physiologist? So an exercise physiologist are university qualified allied health professionals who specializes in the delivery of exercise and lifestyle programs for persons with a broad range of chronic conditions. And as for me, here at ARC, I specialize in neurological conditions and complex disabilities. So we like to think of ourselves as experts in understanding the body's physiological response to exercise. And we use this knowledge to treat specific diseases or conditions, such as a stroke, based on evidence-based practice and research. So essentially, we use exercise as medicine to treat and achieve specific health outcomes. So whether this is to do with your cardiovascular fitness, muscle strength and endurance, we'll do all these type of things to maximize your functional capacity and also your quality of life. Not only that, our ARC EPs also provide education about the importance of physical activity, and some advice and support on the long-term care management of your neurological condition, as well as helping you find ways to participate back into social activities and community programs. Okay, so before we dive in, I would like to give some quick numbers and facts taken from the Stroke Foundation in 2020 here in Australia, just to help set context of today's presentation. So there were 27,000 Australians who experienced a stroke for the first time in their lives in 2020. And this equates to one stroke every 19 minutes. 1 in 4 people globally will have a stroke in their lifetime. And stroke is one of Australia's biggest killers, with more than 445,000 Australians living with the effects of stroke. More importantly, more than 80% of strokes could have been prevented or treatable with lifestyle intervention and increased physical activity levels. So in 2020, 24% of total first ever strokes occurred in people aged 54 years and under. So sadly, the rates of stroke in young people are on the increase, largely due to the poor control of lifestyle factors. And its impact will continue to grow unless action is taken. So currently around 20 strokes a day are impacting Australians of working age, many of which may still have children living at home, which leaves a devastating impact on their family role, as well as their new life after a stroke. So without action by 2050, it is predicted that the number of first ever strokes experienced by Australians annually will increase to over 50,000 or more, or one stroke every 10 minutes. And there will be 819,000 stroke survivors living in the community. One important stat is that somebody who has suffered a stroke for the first time has an accumulated risk of a subsequent stroke of 43% over 10 years, which is a huge stat. So as exercise physiologists or EPs, we would love to bring these numbers down through lifestyle intervention and increase physical activity levels. So how can we get you fit? So We know that there are lots of crossover between physio, OT, and EP, particularly by the time we see you here at our clinic or in the community. But the sooner will be better because there are many benefits of introducing EP early on in your rehab. And this includes establishing an individualized and tailored cardiovascular fitness and progressive resistance training program. So starting with establishing a proper cardiovascular fitness training program. This includes assessing your baseline fitness levels and getting you started with helping you monitor your own intensity and dosage to the correct amount so that we're able to maximize your stroke recovery, particularly in the early stages when you are still relearning some of the new movements, but also to help you long-term in staying physically active. Another thing we look at is establishing a resistance training or strength training program that is progressive so that you have the baseline muscle strength and endurance to complete functional tasks at home or in the community. And this will help complement the kind of work that you're already doing with the physios and OT. So this includes things like your transfer practice, sit to stands, balance practice, walking, and also navigating stairs. And lastly, specific exercise programs to help improve the energy systems required for these activities of daily living. So without going too much into depth, we need to train the different energy systems, which play a huge role with fatigue management. And this will improve your energy levels so that you can complete day-to-day tasks more efficiently and also have the fitness reserves to do more in your daily life. So there are also many more benefits that an EP can bring and can help you beyond just getting you fit. So this includes things like identifying your risk factors that can be modified and giving you advice on the necessary lifestyle changes. So we know stroke survivors are often not met with the required dosage or even meet the minimum requirements of physical activity guidelines. And this predisposes them to sedentary lifestyles and also the development of secondary metabolic conditions such as obesity, diabetes, or worse, a recurrent stroke. So we'll need to address this on an ongoing basis. And this leads us on to ensuring that we're setting you up and supporting you on the long-term benefits of exercise and developing routines to establish a more active lifestyle, particularly in the early stages of your rehab journey. So it is our job to establish this early and give you the tools, the coaching, the confidence and motivation needed to live a more positive and healthier lifestyle. So it becomes more and more part of your everyday routine. The next point is to do with personalized, flexible delivery. So this is goal-based versus a concept we use here at ARC as undercover rehab or therapy. So as EPs, we know that there are going to be different approaches to your intervention, and your one-to-one therapy or group program could look different to another stroke survivor, for example, depending on their goals and needs. So as EPs, we take into account your level of disability, where you're at in the stage of recovery, your exercise tolerance, activity limitations, and physical activity preferences, and also your available social support when we are setting you up the first time with an individualized program. So the challenge for us is then how do we create programs and activities that will increase your participation back into everyday life and your involvement with the family and also in your community. So not all of our clients here at ARC will have functional goals, and we need to explore other options on how we can increase your physical activity levels by using ARC's undercover rehab. So this could look like joining our group programs in the clinic or the community that you enjoy doing, such as walking or cycling group, It could be returning to the local gym or getting you set up for the first time to your local gym with an EP. It could be accessing parks and beaches with your family members or support workers, or even participating in a running or cycling event that will help keep you motivated throughout the year. So these are just some of the many benefits an EP can bring to you and many other stroke survivors here at ARC, which is just beyond just getting you fit. Okay, so the next slide is, why is aerobic exercise or fitness training important to get you fit? So this is what we know in terms of the science. So hopefully you can stay with me here. So we know that aerobic exercise improves aerobic capacity or VO2 max. So VO2 max is just a measure of cardiorespiratory fitness that an EP would use as an assessment tool. So in general, VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen transported from the lungs to the working muscles in a graded exercise test. So this is important to know because we know that stroke is a lack of oxygen supply to the brain, which causes an infarct. So your VO2 max scores or your fitness scores is actually one of the better predictors for survival following a stroke. And there is a direct association with life expectancy and the risk of developing cardiovascular disease or even a recurrent stroke. Another thing we know is that it increases total cerebral blood flow by 25 to 30% during exercise. So again, this is the blood supply to the brain in a given time period, and therefore bringing the vital nutrients to the brain and also the removal of harmful waste. So we know that aerobic exercise has been shown to decrease inflammation in the central nervous system, and essentially can have a neuroprotective effect on the brain following a stroke, and this is very important. Another thing is increased BDNF and other nootropic factors. So you might have heard of this term before, brain-derived nootropic factor, or BDNF. It's a chemical that gets released after a bout of aerobic exercise, particularly at the higher intensities. So BDNF is like fertilizer for the brain, which allows for motor relearning and the firing of regions that are responsible for movement in the brain. So at the correct intensity and dosage, aerobic exercise can promote a term called neurogenesis, which is the growth of new neurons, connections formed in the brain. And this could last up to 10 to 60 minutes following a bout of aerobic exercise. So what this means is that this would be important for relearning new motor skills or cognitive tasks for the first time. And then again, maximizing the benefits of neuroplasticity with high repetition and practice. So essentially, you want to be working at these high aerobic intensities earlier on so that you can improve on whatever functional goals that you have with both your physio and OT. We also know it reduces resting and working heart rate and blood pressure due to reduced mechanical stress of your arteries. So this will help supply more energy efficiently to your resting and working muscles, allowing you to have improved energy levels and the ability to sustain higher workloads for longer periods without fatiguing. We also know it improves insulin sensitivity and body composition. So this helps to control the amount of sugar in the blood and reduces the risk of developing metabolic conditions such as obesity and diabetes. And lastly, it helps to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression to the same degree as medications like antidepressants in mild to moderate cases. So therefore, we see them improving their self-esteem, confidence, as well as their perceived quality of life. Okay, so what does this mean for you? So improved fitness levels or your VO2 max scores could be the difference for you being able to participate back into activities of daily living. It could give you the sense of worth, a sense of purpose, a bit of more responsibility back into your family role, as well as back into the community or even your purpose in general in life. So it could also give you the confidence and motivation to strive for more high level goals, such as returning to work, study. It could be hobbies or even participating back into sports. But we do know that working as an EP is that increasing participation in all of these areas will ultimately lead you to a better quality of life. And it is our job as EPs to give you the best shot and opportunity on a new life after stroke. Okay. So with all that in mind, how do we get you there? How do we make sure you are getting the right amount of aerobic exercise? So again, this is what the literature says, and this can be broken up into components of the FIIT principle, which is the frequency, intensity, time, and type. So this is the exercise dose or quantity needed to improve health similar to medications. And this FIIT principle is specifically the protocol used following a stroke. So in regards to frequency, there was a review of 16 aerobic exercise studies in stroke with a frequency ranging from 2 to 5 days per week, 4 weeks to 6 months. So the most common frequency was 3 times a week, which lasts for 8 to 12 weeks. And this all showed signs of significant between group differences in VO2 max or fitness scores. In regards to time in people after stroke, it is recommended that aerobic exercise should last for 20 to 60 minutes per session or several 10-minute bouts per day. In the literature, most studies found that exercise interventions did start between 10 to 20 minutes and then progressing to 40 to 60 minutes per session. So depending on your presentation, it may be appropriate for someone who has poor endurance or those with more moderate to severe deficits to start at 10 minutes of continuous exercise or until they're able to tolerate longer durations. In regards to type, aerobic exercise can consist of overground walking, treadmill training, with or without body weight support, cycling, and recumbent stepping. All have been shown to improve cardiovascular fitness, and this has also been recommended during inpatient rehab. And the most important part of aerobic exercise is the actual intensity and dosage. So we know that aerobic capacity or your VO2 max scores will improve if intensity regularly maintains 55 to 80% of heart rate max. Although the higher the intensity, the greater and quicker the improvements in your VO2 max scores. Okay, so now I want you to take us to this slide, which looks at the physical activity guidelines from the World Health Organization. So I've got more stats for you. Only 17% of older Australians, so over 65, meet the physical activity guidelines. Only 2/3 of adults aged 18 to 64 years are sufficiently active. So there is still 1/3 that don't meet the guidelines. If all Australians did an extra 15 minutes of brisk walking for at least 5 days each week, this would reduce disease burden due to physical inactivity in the population by approximately 13%. But by increasing this to 30 minutes for 5 days a week, the burden of disease due to physical inactivity could be reduced by 26%. So we know as ARC EPs that our neurological population group are already on the back foot of meeting these requirements following our stroke. And it is our job to address this early, educate them early, because we know that our stroke survivors have an accumulated risk of a subsequent stroke of 43% over the next 10 years. So that's the kind of time frame that we want to make sure we're getting them to the physical activity guidelines as quick as possible, if possible. So these are the type of questions that an EP would typically ask you on assessment or during a sessions, just to find out a bit more information about your current physical activity levels. So things like, how many days of the week are you active? What activities did you do? Of those days, how many days did you participate in moderate to vigorous exercise? So we judge this by using the talk test and check if you're able to hold a conversation. Other questions would be, what is your daily or weekly step count? Did you hit your target goal? Have you been completing your home exercise program? And then we compare all these activities to the guidelines, which is recommended by the World Health Organization, and start putting together a bit of a plan for you to structure your physical activity levels throughout the week. But we also do know that there are some limitations to using this guideline, especially in a stroke and neurological population. So, which leads me on to this, the guidelines are just a guide. So our roles as EPs are recognizing that the guidelines are there to set targets, but also to recognize that you may have functional and cognitive limitations, which are barriers to people within a stroke population. So therefore, targets for physical activity need to be created specifically for you, and we can determine this as EPs, what is considered structured aerobic exercise in terms of the dose and intensity when we consider the FIIT principle, versus any kind of physical activity, which includes your regular day-to-day activities. So we also have a role in progressively increasing your dose of aerobic exercise when you have adapted to a certain intensity. And we'll definitely challenge you to increase the intensity to allow for further improvements to occur. But at the same time, we have the skills and knowledge to know when to pull it back, and at times regress the intensity when required. So for example, we'll consider other factors that might be affecting your exercise tolerance or capacity, such as your sleep and energy levels. It could be the side effects of your medications, other cardiovascular risk factors, such as AF or atrial fibrillation, or maybe it's your current mental well-being contributing to your low or high motivations to exercise. So these are just some of the things we'll take note and help put the steps in place to ensure that we're guiding you to overcoming these barriers. So essentially, we will offer you flexibility and also a bit of creativity for those people wanting to increase their physical activity levels. So for example, if you do suffer from excessive fatigue or someone that has limited mobility and is wheelchair bound, we wouldn't get you spending 30 minutes of each day pushing your wheelchair up and down the street and be burnt out for the rest of the day, but instead would set smaller goals or targets, maybe to start pushing your own wheelchair at home to start with at all times, and then slowly condition you to do more and more. And we will track this all for you so we can progress when we need to. So just remember that the intensity of your physical activity is relative to you, and we will help you be the judge of that. Okay, the next slide is the evidence for physical activity. So suggesting that there is a clear dose-response relationship for exercise intensity, both in regards to mortality risk and the risk of cardiovascular disease. So what that means, the effect size for engaging in regular physical activity range from reducing relative risk of cardiovascular disease by 30 to 40%. And the evidence for dosage includes 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity on 5 days a week compared with no activity was associated with a reduction in mortality risk of 19%. And in terms of intensity, the higher the intensity, the more beneficial it is than low intensity by up to 20%. But just wanted to make sure that the key message is that any physical activity is better than none. Okay, and the next slide is, this was a small trial that was done in Australia actually a few years ago. And this has always stuck with me because of how simple but powerful this intervention was. So there was no piece of equipment or therapists required to get these results. It was a small study, but it definitely showed the way I would prescribe exercises. So in this study, they found that when stroke survivors stood up every 30 minutes and performed 3 minutes of light intensity exercises, so this includes things like your mini squats or sit to stands, calf raises, or marching on the spot, they had lower blood pressure over the day compared to sitting continuously for 8 hours. So the researchers found the same effect when walking for 3 minutes every 30 minutes. So more importantly, this benefit occurred even in people who were taking blood pressure lowering medications. And this is an important finding because high blood pressure is a leading risk factor for stroke, and every small reduction in blood pressure reduces overall risk. So the next slide is that I wanted to highlight with making this link between neurological disease and cardiovascular disease. So when we look at any one of our clients here at ARC, they fall either into an at-risk category because a cardiovascular event such as a stroke, which was the precursor to their neurological condition or deficit, or their neurological condition will become the precursor to the development of secondary health conditions due to deconditioning. So this is due to a decline in function or reduced physical activity levels. But no matter what way you look at it, the challenge or our role as EPs is to get you moving and to structure as much aerobic exercise into your program and increase your day-to-day physical activity levels into your daily routine. So we want to help you normalize this as much as possible. And this last one is just a nice little case study that I thought I should add in here that was referred to me from one of our physios and OTs here at ARC. So this is Norma. She's a 50-year-old lady who suffered a stroke in August 2017. And one of her main goals were to improve her function of her left affected upper limb so that she's able to cook and clean for her son. And she was seeing our physio and OT for this. Another goal was for her to improve her walking capacity without fatiguing, so she can walk to the shops and do her grocery shopping and walk back while holding her shopping bags. So I'm just going to play these videos. So she was set up in the clinic with a cardiovascular training program and also completed a home exercise program that she completed on most days. And this also include outdoor walking. In this next video, we're able to do a bit more high-level balance training in the clinic so that she felt a bit more confident walking independently in the community. And in this next one, we're then able to get her set up at her local gym for the first time and was attending regularly. And as a result, she was able to make new social connections and friendships. and then started attending a weekly yoga class together until COVID closed the gyms down, unfortunately. And then more recently, over the last 6 months, Norma is now able to climb a set of stairs unassisted, which allows her to get to the shops all on her own. And not only that, now she's also able to use her left affected hand to hold vegetables and meat to cut on the chopping board, which has made a huge difference to Norma's independence and quality of life. And that is all, guys. So that's end of the presentation. I'm just going to close the presentation down now. And if you've got any questions for me, please feel free to type into the chat box and I can go through them. Do I need a referral from a GP for individual programs? No, not necessarily. I mean, you can contact ARC straight away. We've got our website as well as our phone number, which we could pass on to you if you wanted to, contact and get a bit more information on how we can get you started for an individual program. The GPs do refer to us, and we definitely liaise with them in terms of starting an exercise physiology program. So hopefully that answers your question, Ken. I'm just going to wait a moment to see if there's any more questions that come through. Is it home programs now during lockdowns? No, our clinic is still open because we are still delivering an essential service. We do offer telehealth sessions on Zoom or online, but we still do one-to-one sessions in the clinic. There's no groups at the moment, but during lockdown, there's still one-to-one sessions that are happening both in the clinic and in some communities, in terms of if you're not in the LGAs that are restricted, we'll have therapists that will go into people's homes and start a program. Okay, guys, I think there's no more questions. I'm going to log out. But thanks for listening, for those that are still there. And hopefully you were able to learn a thing or two from today's presentation. Thanks, guys. Bye.